I'm telling you, Sully, this time it's legit. The guy told me that the treasure is hidden in the land of blessed range, which clearly has to be Africa. Yes, I got it from a reliable source. It was the drunk guy behind the comic shop, but still, I mean, I've been searching for this for years, and this is the first solid lead that I've ever had. Well, that's just part of it. There's always someone else after the treasure, but the tricky part, to be the last one still holding on. Fire up the plane, we're headed to Tanzania. Hello? What? Wait, you found what? Where? Well, there you go. Turns out it was in the same Pokemon region as me, so I didn't even really have to go really anywhere. Handy. Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Taylor Campbell here, and welcome back to Comic Crush, my little show on the internet where we talk about comic books and stuff. And today, the comics we're talking about is Uncharted. Now this is actually a really big deal for me. Like, this is Grail levels of comic book collecting, in my personal collection at least. If you've been with the channel for a while, a few years ago, I did like this free comic book day preview thing, and at the beginning of it I had a little skit where I was looking for this book, and I found this book online for a lot of money. It was actually $400 when I found it. Whoop. Alright, so let's just pull it up on Amazon and let's get this order. Ah! And so I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford Uncharted the comic book. Until recently, I was hanging out with some friends in Las Vegas, and one of my friends was going through like a bunch of these game manuals at a local used game store that they had there. It was called Retro City Games. If you're ever down in Vegas, I recommend checking them out. They're great. They're always friendly staff, fantastic place to go. Anyway, she was just looking through it, and I'm not much into game guides, and she turns to me and is like, hey, I found a game guide for Uncharted. And I'm like, okay, which game? And she looks closer, she's like, actually, I think it's a comic book. Really? And so I go over there, check it out, and sure enough, it's that comic book I've been searching for years. And they priced it. I don't know if they just didn't know what they had, or if this is just how they priced it. They priced it at $10, cheaper than it was at retail. And I'm like, okay, well, there we go. This is mine now. Thank you very much. So what exactly is Uncharted? Like, there was a movie recently, and now I'm talking about it here on Comic Crash. What is Uncharted? Well, Uncharted is a video game franchise from the same developers that made Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter back in the day. Uncharted is like this treasure hunting event. It's so fun. You solve the puzzles, dig through ancient artifacts and ancient ruins, and you get the big scary artifact that has the big magic powers that scares everybody, and there's mystical monsters, and it's very Indiana Jones in its presentation and its pacing. And really, that's the best way to describe it. If you love Indiana Jones, you'll love Uncharted. Uncharted is a very special franchise for me. And the way I came about it is the way I come about a lot of things. It was through Toy Story. See, once upon a time, I got Toy Story 2 on the PlayStation, and I absolutely loved this game, and I played it all the time. I still play it all the time. Like, whenever I have it available, I'll be like, oh cool, I can play Toy Story, I want to play Toy Story, and then I do. Now, several years later, I go to college, and I just depressed as all out. Like, I was in a bad spot, guys. The girl I liked had just recently broke my heart. I couldn't get along with my roommates. My classes, I was failing all of my classes. And like any depressed person, I'm like, know what? I'm going to buy myself a PlayStation Vita. You can tell that it's my PlayStation Vita because if you look right there, it has a little Superman sticker. So it's obviously mine. And I also carry it around in this elusive case, which is fun. Anyway, I picked this up because a friend of mine recommended that if I got this, then I could play Toy Story 2 on the go because it was on the game store for this, and I do, and I still do. But it's like, I put some money into this console. I should probably see what else is there and available to get. And they had a demo for the exclusive game. You still can't play this anywhere other than the PlayStation Vita. They had a demo for Uncharted Golden Abyss, which was more or less a spin-off / prequel to the proper games released on the home consoles. I just felt in love with this game. It's like, this is fantastic. I feel like an invincible Indiana Jones. I can conquer anything. And there was this one bit, and it's kind of stupid in retrospect that this did this to me. But there's one bit in Chapter 4 of that game where Nathan Drake has all of his weapons taken away, has all of his gear taken, his backpack full of artifacts has been stolen, and he's knocked out, he wakes up, he has a massive headache, and the building he's in is currently on fire. And the way he responds to this is just by looking at everything and saying,
"What is that, smoke? Great. Just pile it on, I can take it."
It's like, you know what? It's dumb, but somehow that gave me an attitude shift with my situation, and things got better. Things were going to get better anyway, but I felt better about it. And so for some really dumb reason, Uncharted helped pull me out of a really nasty slump, and things are way better now. And then later I found a PlayStation 3 and I got the trilogy, and I loved the trilogy of games. And then I got a PlayStation 4. First 2 games I got on the PlayStation 4 were Call of Duty, because it came with the console, and then I got rid of that because I don't care so much about first-person shooters. And so I guess the second 2 games that I got were Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, which came with the PlayStation 3 trilogy, and Uncharted 4. And I was really deeply entrenched in this, and when I found out they had this comic series, I just had to find it. I had to read it. I had to find out what was inside it, but it was impossible to find at a reasonable price. They didn't even have a digital copy that I could get. So I'm just hung high and dry waiting for this physical edition, and then it finally comes out, and I'm just really excited about this, guys. This is a big deal for me, for my collection. And so, you know what? Let's just dive in. Let me tell you about this crazy rare video game tie-in book that I just had to have. So our story starts in the classic Uncharted fashion. Nathan Drake is standing on top of a fighter plane inside a volcano during an earthquake, and he's underground. How do we get in this mess? It's the classic Uncharted opening. Every game kind of starts like this, where you're in the middle of the adventure, and you're just like, how did we get here? Well, let's hop back to the beginning of the game and find out. So Nathan Drake is working with his longtime friend Harry Flynn. Now, Harry Flynn shows up in Uncharted 2, and that's kind of the vibe that I've been getting from this book. It looks like it was meant to kind of tie a lot of the characters that are new to Uncharted 2 into the backstory of Nathan Drake. This is a prequel to the first game, after all. They're working together, and of course they're under a lot of fire. There's a ton of guys just firing bullets at the two of them as they were coming out of this ancient temple with a backpack full of stuff. Lots of bullets firing until the bullets just stop. And Flynn is like, maybe they've had enough? And so, they peek around the corner, and of course they didn't have enough. It's this big guy that has a flamethrower, and he's just going to torch the whole jungle if it means that he can get rid of Nathan Drake. So Nathan and Flynn, they just book it into the jungle. They have all these bad guys searching for them. There's no way they're going to get out of this cleanly. So Nathan looks around trying to figure out how we can get rid of like 15 guys all at once, and he sees the gas tank on one of the trucks, fires his gun at it, and it explodes in beautiful 4K action. They get back to base and they start splitting up the treasures, and Nathan Drake gives all of the obvious treasure to Flynn, who's like, okay, why you're giving me all this obvious treasure and the only thing you're keeping is this ratty old notebook. And Nate's like, well, I mean, what can I say? I'm curious, and it was my fault that you got stuck in that, so take all the treasure. You deserve it. And so Flynn's like, okay, and he takes the treasure and he leaves. In comes Sully. Now, Sully is Nathan Drake's partner in crime, also kind of like his father figure. So it turns out Sully had set up a buyout for these crazy billionaires, these eccentric billionaires, for this specific notebook, and Nate was able to get it a day early. What's interesting about this notebook is that it's all in code. And so they're like, you know what, let's just head over to the bar. I want to take a look at this. Shouldn't take that long. Not taking that long ends up taking an entire day. But this is brilliant right here. Like, let me show you how, like, the mastery that went into making this particular book. We see here, it takes Nate all day and into the next morning to figure out the code behind this book. And that's cool, because if this was the video game, what would happen is Nate would look at the code and you would pull out Nate's notebook that had the key to the code, and the code would have been cracked in, less than 5 minutes. But that is the difference between comic book storytelling and video game storytelling. Video game storytelling requires a lot more snappy response to actions. You're controlling the action. They need to give you a response fairly soon. However, in a comic book, you can take time to make things happen. And you should give different things more time than what a video game would do. For instance, at the beginning of this, we had that firefight. If it was a video game, you would have spent a very long time in that firefight compared to all of this stuff. This stuff would have went by really quick. But in the comic book, the firefight is much shorter. Because while it's still great and still actiony, sitting there for pages and pages and pages of just a firefight doesn't work as well for comics. We don't have the patience to go through that. We do have the patience to go through hard, heavy story bits, much more than we would in a video game. So they take the time to solve this puzzle that in the game would take 5 minutes. It's amazing. This proves that the writing team and the art team really understood how to make comics. Who was the writing team? Joshua Williamson, Sergio Sandoval, and Paul Gass. Good job, guys. You guys did a great job. Holy cow. I am impressed. Anyway, Nate figured out the code, and he wakes up Sully and tells him exactly what this journal is. Turns out this journal is the private journal of Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd. Now, Richard Evelyn Byrd is a real person and real history. He was an explorer, and he was a pilot famous for being the first to fly over the North Pole and the South Pole. And turns out he had this journal and he wrote it in code because he had something very interesting in his possession. He had the Amber Room, Russia's famous Amber Room. Now, if you don't know what the Amber Room is, the Amber Room is a monument room that was at the Palace of St. Petersburg. There's a replica of it there now, but what happened was during World War II, the Nazis invaded St. Petersburg and they stole the Amber Room. They just took the whole thing apart and took it away because this room was made completely out of pure amber. Now, in real history, it disappeared. We have no idea where it went. We've only been able to recover small pieces of it that were stolen by low-ranking Nazi army men. In the book, it suggests that Russia was able to get the room back, and to prevent it from getting stolen again, what they did was they hired Richard Evelyn Byrd to go hide it at the North Pole so that they can go back and they can bring it back later. Now, why in the world would a bunch of communists ask an American pilot to hold on to one of their most precious national treasures and hide it for them rather than using one of their own guys? Turns out Byrd had an eccentric side. And this is also real life right here. He believed in the hollow earth theory. The hollow earth theory suggests that at the poles there are openings where you can go down underneath the crust of the earth, and there's a whole other world there, like this big civilization that is powered by a secondary sun. The city was called Agartha. The idea was that Byrd was going to take the Amber Room and hide it there, inside the earth, in this hidden secret world with advanced technologies. It's like the myth of Atlantis if Atlantis was inside the planet's core. Nathan Drake finds that in the journal, Byrd said that he had one panel from the Amber Room, just to prove that he did indeed have it. And in that one panel, he etched in coordinates on where he hid the rest of it. So they take the journal to the buyers, the Ludlows. It's a brother and sister dynamic here. We have Michael Ludlow and his sister Rose Dottie. Now Rose Dottie, in the course of their conversation, lets it slip that they are going to an auction to go pick up an amber seal. And Nate and Sully are like, okay, we're not going to acknowledge that until we walk away, and then we're going to be like, okay, so we're totally going to go to that auction, we're totally going to steal that, right? Oh yeah, we're going to steal that. You know what this means? It's time to plan a heist. So night comes, they go over to the location of the auction, and they start running reconnaissance, and as Nate is out there making notes in his journal about what kind of equipment they're going to need, a mysterious figure shows up from behind. We know them as Chloe Frazer. Chloe Frazer from Uncharted 2. I guess she's also in the movie. Turns out Chloe is also after the Amber Seal, but Nathan was able to escape from that, and, you know, they left, and now they're going to check out the auction on the first day just to see what kind of security the Russian mafia has on this place. We find ourselves at the auction, and we have a crystal skull sold to Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is in this book, and he buys a crystal skull. Nice. And they're just running reconnaissance. They see there's a bunch of mafia guys there. We also learn that the Ludlows have rigged the auction, and they've already put forward the money to buy the Amber Seal, so the only option they have now is to just steal it. They have to steal it that night. Nate goes into the catacombs of the castle, and he slowly sneaks around trying to find where they stored the Amber Seal. As he's slowly moving forward, he gets ambushed by Chloe Frazer, who's also looking for that Amber Seal, looking to steal it that night as well. They have a fist fight, and they basically fist fight each other all the way until they get to that Amber Seal. When they get to it, Chloe's like, well, I'm going to steal it. And Nate is like, okay, you can go ahead and take it. I just need to take a look at it. Because all he really needs are the coordinates that Byrd wrote at the top of the seal. Goes over there, finds the coordinates, writes them down, and Chloe's like, great, now I can take it. And she grabs it and hasn't seen any Indiana Jones movies because it activated a pressure plate that set off all the alarms, and now the Russian mafia is going to come and take them and torture them and ultimately kill them probably. We see them running away from Russian mafia agents, and Nate's like, okay, well, maybe we can just climb up to that window and get out. And Chloe's like, well, sure, or I could just blow up this wall and we can escape that way. They escape, but they get separated. Chloe hands the Amber Seal off to Nate, who's running. He's calling for Sully. Sully doesn't answer. Turns out Sully was captured by the Ludlows, and the Ludlows also capture Nathan Drake as well. The Ludlows then take Drake and Sully to dinner. And that's where they reveal that they know that Nathan Drake cracked the code of the journal. This is what Nathan Drake does. Like, he has that reputation. They also reveal that they aren't the Ludlows. They are the descendants of a guy named Thomas Doughty. Now, this is significant because Thomas Doughty is one of Sir Francis Drake's old, pirate captain buddies. They hung out a lot, and they were partners for a while until Sir Francis Drake executed Thomas Doughty for treason, and there was a bit of witchcraft. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because Nathan Drake claims that he is the heir to Sir Francis Drake. And so now the Doughties are like, you know what? You ruined our family name. Your great-great ancestor ruined our family name. And so we're going to take it out on you, and we're also going to find the Amber Room to restore our family's honor. And Nate's like, well, that's a grudge if I've ever heard any. They force Nathan Drake to reveal the location of the Amber Room, or they will kill Sully. And so Nathan gives them some coordinates, and the Dowdies leave. They tie up Drake and Sully, and they leave them for the Russian Mafia to come grab them.
Now, of course, any treasure hunter worth his salt knows not to give the correct coordinates to the bad guy. And also, thankfully, Chloe Fraser is never really that far away, and she shows up and helps Nathan Drake and Sully get away from the Russian Mafia. The three of them decide, you know what, instead of disappearing on each other and not working together, working against each other, we should work together and try to get the Amber Room before the Ludlows can.
Our heroes get to the North Pole, but of course they need the journal still. You always need the journal. The journal always has clues on how to get past stuff. We've learned this in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You have the journal at all times because that's where everything important is written down. Now, the problem is that the Dowdies have that journal. So they still have to infiltrate their camp and get that journal and what have you. They get down there, they invade the camp, they find the journal, but of course in the process of finding the journal, they get caught by the Dowdies. And now, we have this part of the treasure hunter story where the bad guys are forcing the good guys to do all the hard work so that the bad guys can get all the cool treasure. And so everyone takes off, and Sully pilots the plane, and since Sully and Nate both know the directions that the journal told them to go, as well as the proper coordinates, that's how they're able to get down into the gorge, and they find this empty cavern that is just full of old 1940s aircraft, military surplus. It was an obvious camp. And as they're looking around, they're like, oh, this place is way too cool. This place exists. And Byrd was right. Wow. And in one of the tents, they find the Amber Room, but the Amber Room is completely destroyed. It's worthless. Absolutely worthless, ruining everybody's day. But they do find one other point of interest, and it is this giant door that has all of these glyphs painted on it and carved into it, depicting a huge city, as well as depicting Byrd showing up to this city and meeting these people. So we have Sully repairing the plane, and we have the Dowdies complaining about how the Amber Room isn't real, and how it's broken, and they wasted all this time and money trying to find something that ultimately turned out to be worthless. And then we have Nate and Chloe, who find a way to open up the big door, and they go through after knocking out a couple of guards and not taking their weapons like anyone in playing the video game would do. Now the Dowdies have figured out that they have already left, and they chase after them. So we have this fun exchange where Nate and Chloe will get a few steps ahead, catch their breath, and then the Dowdies will catch up to them and start firing guns and bullets at them, and a game of cat and mouse just kind of continues until it's interrupted by, the mystical monsters that were promised in treasure hunting movies. Just these huge, shadowy demon creatures that are just snarling and scary, and they have sharp claws, and they're just clawing at people, and it's big and scary. It's fun. Action adventure. All of the hired guns just start falling one by one till Chloe finds an RPG, and she fires it into the cavern, closing it up, and also closing up the pathway that they came from. So the only way out now is to just keep going forward. And as they go forward, they discover something amazing. They find the lost city of Agartha, and it is huge. It is also completely uninhabited. Something terrible happened. Turns out these shadow monsters killed everyone who lived in the city. But that doesn't change the fact that this city is just ginormous, and you could tell that at one point it was very far advanced. While Nate and Chloe are just in awe of this place, the Dowdies do get the upper hand. They shoot Nate's shoulder, so now he's injured, and Chloe has the drop on her, and they both have a couple of guns on them. The Dowdies have figured the only other chance they have is to get this second sun that the city of Agartha is famous for, and take that with them, take that power source. And they find it. It is huge. It is this giant mosaic made out of diamond that just glows with this brilliant, radiant light. Because on the other side of this thing is a bunch of hot lava, and the only thing keeping them from becoming, melted by the lava is this wall of diamond. And like any dumb couple of bad guys, they betray each other. Michael gets shot. Rose goes up there, picks up this ginormous diamond from the second sun, and immediately becomes very, very crispy. It also ruins the structural integrity of the entire wall, and now all of this lava is coming in, it's destroying the city of Agartha, and it is chasing after our heroes. Time to run. Time to run away from the giant boulder. In this case, the giant wall of lava coming to eat them. They're running, we're jumping over gaps, we're climbing up walls, all the kinds of things you would do in an Uncharted chase scene. It's fantastic, I love it. They get to, almost out, but as they're almost about to get out, they run into those demon monsters with their sticks, and they're just like killing these monsters as they're going along, and it's high octane action, you gotta love it. But one of these shadow creatures starts reaching out of the lava. And, he's on fire, and he's even scarier now, and he's about to claw out Chloe, but then Nate throws a rock at it, killing it, and he's like, there you go. Saved your life this time. And, of course, it was that one rock that was supporting, everything he was standing on, and he falls down, and now he's just, on this tiny little rock floating in the middle of this lava lake. And Chloe says, okay, just stay calm, I'll run and grab Sully and we'll come and grab you in a second. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'm just going to, hop around here, try to stay ahead of everything, and jumps onto, a fighter jet, and we're back at the beginning of the comic now, where he's on top of the fighter plane, underground, in an erupting volcano during an earthquake. Nate looks up and he sees the airplane that they arrived in, and Sully is piloting. The plane comes in, Chloe is reaching out of the airplane door, grab my hand, Nate, and Nate reaches up, grabs her hand, they pull him into the airplane, and, fingers crossed, lava's chasing after them, caverns closing behind them. There's one slimmer of hope, they think they see sunlight out in the distance, and they fly towards it, fly out of an erupting volcano, and we find them on the beach somewhere in some really nice touristy tropical island. They just wash up on shore. And we do what any treasure hunter does that got out of a life or death situation without really getting any treasure. We celebrate it. They have a night, they celebrate. Sully goes off and does whatever Sully does. Dirty old man. And Nate and Chloe, they spend a night together. Nate wakes up, Chloe is long gone, and has taken, the pictures that she has, and she's going to give them to her employer. And Nate and Sully, all they can really afford now, they don't have an airplane anymore. They're able to afford this dinky, ratty boat, and they take that and they're off for the next adventure. Let's start talking about this story, because holy crap, this book is just fantastic. Very well done. Like I said, the creative team behind it somehow were able to make a video game adaptation that drops the video game-ness of it, the stuff that only works in a video game, and converted it into something that only works for a comic book. You could not tell the story the same way in a video game. The action set pieces are huge, and they're still there, but since you're not there playing them, since this isn't a over-the-shoulder third-person shooter and it's a comic book, they don't spend forever, issues upon issues, just showing Nate in a gunfight. They show the gunfight, they show the action, but then they move on. And Nathan also isn't as invincible as he is in the games. In the games, he gets a lot of flack for just somehow being unkillable. In the games, it is a shooter. You go through the adventure, and you somehow kill off 1,000 terrorists, and you never get hit once. But obviously that doesn't work in a strictly narrative sense, and so they don't bother. There's a lot less bad guys. The action pieces are a lot shorter. But it is more believable that Nathan Drake and company could get out of it just fine. It's just the different in the language of video games versus the language of comic books. In video games, you have to be really conscious of having snappy responses to actions that happen. In comic books, you don't have to be as quick showing those actions happen. It also completely decimates one of the bigger criticisms to the Uncharted series, which made famous the phrase ludonarrative dissonance, which means that like during the story, Nathan Drake is like this ragtag, scrappy, swashbuckling guy that anyone could be, but during gameplay, he is an invincible Superman. This comic book completely gets rid of that and just, takes that core element of Nathan Drake, that scrappy swashbuckler guy, and makes that the entire story. If I do have any complaints about this book, they're very minor, and it has to do with the shadow monsters. Because in every other Uncharted story, the shadow monsters have something to do with the lost city that they encounter. Like the big yetis were actually just the guards for Shambhala, or the scary slimy zombie things from Uncharted 1 were actually the conquistadors that conquered that island and were cursed. And the shadow monsters are just shadow monsters in this, which is a little bit disappointing. However, seeing as this was only a 6-issue miniseries, I can understand why they wouldn't want to take the time to try and expand upon that too much. But, even just a sentence here, or just a single panel showing like the people transforming into those, would have been enough for me to say, you know what, okay, I can believe that there is now a curse on this city and that these shadow monsters actually mean something to that. And just one more note. If anyone out there with any kind of influence is watching this, may I suggest something? Tomb Raider has had a comic book series that has been going on for a long time, usually on and off, but usually pretty good. It's been long running. And dare I say, Indiana Jones's best adventures happen within comics. Uncharted, the game series is over. I don't really see them going back to Nathan Drake at all in a video game. I do, however, think that more comic books would be very, very successful. Like this miniseries, it was just 6 issues. But my goodness, was this a great 6 issues to read. It captured the spirit that the Uncharted games had. It gave us a really cool, interesting, unique story to go with it. I absolutely loved it, and I think that a good way to try and keep this franchise alive would be to license out the comic book again. I don't know if you'd want to go with DC again. DC seems to be pretty busy handling, their own stuff. Usually people give licenses like this to like Dark Horse or IDW, but regardless, I think this story proves that Uncharted would work really, really well as an ongoing series. So think about that. If you yourself are looking for this book, then I am very, very, very sorry. Last time I saw it online, it was going for $100. Best I can tell you is to just keep your eyes open, and maybe perchance you'll be able to find it at a price that won't ultimately make you lose everything that you own. But it's a great series, and I would highly recommend it. I just really hope that they somehow find a way to reprint this and to reintroduce back into society in a way that isn't pirating. So that's what I've got for you today. Tell me what you think about this story, or no, tell me about a comic book you've been searching for a long time, or one of your favorite comic book finds when you were out collecting. Or, maybe you have some thoughts on making further Uncharted comics, or whatever else, recommendations, whatever. Let's just talk in the comments below. And hey, until next time, thank you for joining me. Have a great day. And remember to always be your best self.